briefly about populism and where the Modi government fits into, I think, a larger populist moment that we're experiencing in many parts of the world. And then the rest we can sort of, maybe do Q&A and so on. So I won't take up much time. But there's a very interesting, the definition of populism that Francis Fukuyama, the political scientist, put out, which says that populists around the world essentially share three characteristics. And he's talking about people like Modi, Erdogan, Duterte, Orban in Hungary, and so on. I'm not quite sure whether your Prime Minister fits or not, but that maybe we can get into the debate. And the first characteristic, of course, is economic. And that what you find is that populists tend to put in place economic policies that feel good to voters in the short term, but are unsustainable in the long term. And in the Indian example, for instance, I would say that one of the reasons that the BJP government was re-elected was that it was seen as quite successful in terms of providing people with things like subsidized cooking gas connections, toilets, loans for small businesses. Now, whether this stuff is sustainable with the economic growth slowing and with the fiscal deficit soaring, most economists would argue that's probably not the case, but that's the sort of first leg. The second aspect that all these populists share across the world is this idea of communicating directly with the people. They don't need intermediaries. They want to have a direct connection with the masses. In the Indian case, you have the Prime Minister has this radio program called Man Ki Baat. And along with this idea of communicating directly with the masses comes an instinctive mistrust of institutions, or any institutions that would check the power of the leader, whether it's the courts, the media, the permanent bureaucracy, and so on. So that's the sort of second part, which you speak directly. And the third, and probably the most troubling aspect of modern day populism, is that when a populist speaks of the people, there haven't been that many she's, he doesn't really mean all the people. He means a subset of the people as authentically the people. So when Trump is speaking of the people, he doesn't mean all Americans, he means some Americans. And similarly, when Viktor Orban in Hungary is speaking of the people, he does not necessarily mean the gypsies, and so on. And in the Indian case, of course, because of the nature of the ruling party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, the people in this case are the 80% of Indians who self-identify as Hindu. Those are the people. So those are kind of like the classic sort of the three things that define a populist. And to that I'll quickly add a fourth, which is that all of the populists these days have a very fraught relationship with their country's traditional elites. And doing that particularly with the media. So you have someone like, Trump talking about fake news. In the Indian case, you have, Modi before his most recent election had come up with this phrase, the Khan Market Gang. And this mythical Khan Market Gang, of which I'm sure Mr. Iyer is the president, if not the president, a charter member, is, out, and it's these out of touch, English-speaking elites who spend all their time sipping wine and going to Thinkfest in Lahore and conspiring against the hard-working leader who represents the masses. So that's my kind of fourfold sort of look at this phenomenon, and I'll stop there and we can sort of take it further later.
Mani, maybe you'd like to make an opening statement.
If I had come here about a month earlier, I wouldn't have known what to say other than endorse everything that Sadanand has said, and probably do so in much more impassioned terms than the kind of academic approach that he has adopted, because I really have been in great despair about the nature of my country. It didn't seem to me that since 2014, I'm living in the same country that I was born into in 1941 and found myself independent at the age of 6. But I come here with a sense of optimism today, because what has happened in the last 4 weeks or so in India is what I call the popular counter-revolution. It's a popular counter-revolution because no political party has had anything to do with it. No industrialist is financing it. There is no Karl Marx or Savarkar who is giving it an ideological orientation. It's an entirely spontaneous response on the part of perhaps many of those who actually voted for Mr. Modi in May 2019. These are the people that are coming out. I find from private conversations I've had in the last less than 48 hours that I've been here, that some Pakistanis seem to think that it is the Muslims of India who have thrown off their fear and have come to the fore. But it's actually a complete, it's the students who have come out as students. It is youth who have come out as youth. It is women who have come out as women. And none of them is asking whether you're a Muslim or I'm a Hindu. They're saying that citizenship in India should have no connection whatsoever with religion, and what they are protesting about is a religious color, a religious tinge being given to the notion of an Indian citizenship. And so when I wrote about it, I described it as Modi's triple talaq to the Muslim community. Because first we had the National Register of Citizens in Assam, which was designed to identify who were Bengali speakers and who were Assamese speakers, and that by the BJP's intervention, specifically by the intervention of the Prime Minister and the Home Minister, was converted into a religious issue because it was predicated on the assumption that we never had before in India, that India is the natural homeland of the Hindus, and therefore the Hindus can stay here, whether they've come here illegally or not, from Bangladesh, but the Muslims will have to watch out for themselves. And when the final results came, we had the extraordinary result that of the illegal migrants who had been identified by their process, a little over half were Hindus and a little under half were Muslims. So the axe would not fall on all the illegal migrants, it would only fall on the illegal Muslim migrants. And in the same Assam that had twice over voted enthusiastically for Mr. Modi, when they discovered that his program was not one of protecting the Assamese language or the Assamese culture, but was designed to divide the people of Assam on religious lines, it is his own supporters, the students there, the politicians there, his own party people there, who have risen in revolt against him. And when the CAA came, that is the Constitution Amendment Act, the argument that was made and is still being made by the BJP is that this is not going to affect the rights of any Indian. But the act itself said that whereas people fleeing from 3 identified countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan, as a result of persecution, which was explained by the Home Minister in Parliament as religious persecution, would be fast-tracked to citizenship, but that they wouldn't include any Muslim refugee. Now, the obvious example for us today is the Rohingyas. We have about 36 to 40,000, the figure varies, Rohingya Muslims who come into India. They are not going to be given refuge. And Christians, Hindus, Muslims who speak Tamil, who have come into India in huge numbers, but that part of India which has nothing to do with Mr. Modi, I'm talking about my home state of Tamil Nadu, there are lakhs of refugees from Sri Lanka, Tamil speakers. They have come in because they are Tamil. They haven't come in because of religion. But this is not covered in the amendment. So that it has been seen through as an attempt to introduce initially for immigrants a religious qualification to become an Indian, and that the next step which will come, which is the National Population Register, followed by the National Register of Indian Citizens, this perversion that has taken place with the NRC in Assam and then the CAA in Delhi is going to get converted into trying to establish that there are people who are illegally in India, do fast track all non-Muslims to citizenship, and then deal with Muslims who for one reason or the other have not been able to produce the documentation that proves who they are. So they've spotted that this is an attempt through the back door to try to introduce religious qualifications for citizenship in a secular country. That's why I called it a triple talaq. And they have now come out on the streets because they are fighting for the idea of India that we had as a national consensus in our country till 2014. And what is happening at the moment is a huge ideological divide. I would call it a rift valley between the idea of India that Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru handed over to our country at independence. Of course, they invented this idea of India many years before. It is the basis of our freedom struggle. But now, this is now being challenged about 100 years after the idea of Hindutva was first articulated in 1923. So they've had a sudden victory after 90 years of the people of India rejecting the idea of nationhood or citizenship being based on religion. That is really the background to what is happening, and I think this counter-revolution that we've seen in the last 3 weeks, of which the most impressive is what is happening in Shaheen Bagh in southwest Delhi, where women and women alone have been in relay protest 24/7 for the last 3 weeks through a period that is described in our newspapers as the coldest winter that Delhi has experienced in the last 117 years. And I think that applies to Lahore as well. And they're all out there in the open. It's amazing.
I think you'd like to comment on what so let's the agreement and the disagreement. It's good to have disagreement so early. I agree with everything that Manu just said about the nature of the problem with the Citizenship Act and how it is married to the proposed National Register of Citizens and the phase that this has evoked, the sort of ideological rift valley. And while I would very much like the protesters' point of view to prevail, I have to sort of, put my analytical hat. I have to say, I'm not sure. I feel that the government actually and the ruling party have many cards here. For example, they are able to portray this law as merely an act of compassion towards Hindus and Sikhs who may have found themselves stranded on the wrong side of the border by an accident of history in 1947. Now, of course, it's a dishonest way of presenting it because none of the protesters have a problem with them being given accelerated citizenship. The problem that people have, and I've written against this law also, is is this idea of excluding selectively only one category of people, which is Muslims, even though we all know that there are persecuted Muslim groups in the neighborhood too. Rohingya is an example, and there are obviously several examples in this country too. So the point is that it puts the protesters in a bit of a bind for two reasons. The first is that they are arguing a somewhat subtle point on constitutional secularism and appropriateness, whereas the government's point is much more visceral, which is, hey, I'm helping poor refugees, why do these people not want to help the refugees? And the second reason I'm skeptical is that the government really, and this is one of the big changes we've seen over the last 5 years, the government controls to a large extent. It has an ability to shape the narrative, particularly in the Hindi media, also using social media and WhatsApp and so on, in a way that's quite powerful. So I agree that there's this Rift Valley. I agree that it's a very clear ideological question. I agree that one side, in my view, we share the view of which side occupies the moral high ground, but I disagree on whether the side that occupies the moral high ground is necessarily going to prevail.
Okay, a couple of questions from me to each of you. Sadanand, you said you're talking about populism and the characteristics that define it, but just for the sake of clarity, can you also tell us what are the conditions under which a particular type of populism arises? To what extent does economics play a role in it, in terms of living standards, in terms of the growth of the economy, jobs, and so on and so forth? And secondly, is this the era of right-wing populisms or and the old era of left-wing populisms is over?
I would say that this is an era of right-wing populism, and the defining feature is actually that it has a cultural tinge. It's not sort of old-fashioned left-wing populism. It's about the haves and have-nots. And here I have, my own sense is that economics does, it always matters, right? So if you take the US example again, the fact that many people in the Rust Belt, particularly white working class voters, felt that they weren't going to have lives that were as good as their parents' lives. They felt that they were being left behind. The costs were racing ahead. They felt that the kinds of jobs that they could have once looked forward to no longer existed. It certainly played into it. But the dominant factor, I would say, in this kind of populism is actually cultural. I think Modi was certainly helped by the fact that, as Modi pointed out yesterday, by the fact that there was a slowdown in the economy around 2011, 2012. The previous Congress government was seen as not having a handle on it. But I think the underlying factor that really allows Hindutva, which did not have a constituency 100 years ago, to have a fairly substantial constituency now, is demographic anxiety. And what these guys, what they feel, and this is again similar to populism across in Europe, right? So the Hungarians and the Poles don't have any immigrants. But Hungarian and Polish populism plays on the fear of immigrants. The Rohingya question, I mean, it's fascinating, right? What is 36,000 to 40,000 in a country of 1.3 billion? It is not even infinitesimal. And I remember about a year ago, the Bollywood star Priyanka Chopra had gone to Myanmar, and she went to Bangladesh, and she went to one of these camps as the UN ambassador, a Rohingya camp, and she ended up being attacked. And it's because these demographic anxieties are not based on anything empirical. They're based on this vague sense of disquiet that my people are going to be overtaken or overwhelmed by the other. And that is, if you've seen polls on this in country after country in Europe, where the people who have these fears also have numbers that are completely exaggerated. So if you talk to Brexit voters about what they think the immigrant population is in the UK, it will be of several orders of magnitude greater than what it really is. And I think in the Indian context, the demographic problem, which is why Assam is so central to this, and Bengal also, is that there is a very strong feeling among BJP supporters that they belong to a culture and a civilization that has slowly been shrinking geographically. They point to partition but also demographically within India. And that anxiety is much, much harder to deal with, partly because it's irrational, but partly because there's an element of it that is based on some kind of truth. And that makes it, to my mind, much harder to counter than something that will, if something rooted purely in economics.
Mani, you said that the students are out there not, and you said they're not as students, women are out there not as women, and the youth. Now, what exactly do you mean by that? I mean, is there a common theme to everybody, or are they agitating for different things here?
You know, these demonstrations in the last 3 weeks have been taking place across more than 100 campuses in different parts of India. When television shows which are the points at which demonstrations are taking place, it's like looking at a face that has smallpox. You find dots all over the place, north, south, east, west. And there is no political party and there is no politician who can claim to have been leading this. And while, for example, the demonstration in the Jawaharlal Nehru University was over an enormous hike in fees and food charges and so forth, it got converted into part and parcel of the general movement. I'm not sure, in fact I share Sadanand's view, that there is no proof that this will persist, that over a period of 4.5 years, that the Modi government is legitimately entitled to under our democracy, that we will have this counter-revolution continuing. But when I consider that the political, when I consider as a politician and a partisan politician, that 6 months ago in May, the opposition was, to use an expression from wrestling, chit ho gaye the. We didn't know what to do. It hit us so badly that no political party was even willing to perform aggressively its political role, and too many people everywhere were beginning to ask themselves whether their mistake had not been secularism. Should we also not, take a piece of the Hindutva cake and claim it as our own? And now that this revolution around the country has taken place, there is a demonstration that the old idea of India still has great validity. And if the political parties draw inspiration, as they appear to be doing, from what is happening around the place, I think we stand a fair chance of not rescuing the old idea of India in the next 4 years, but perhaps after the next 4 years.
Which of course brings me to the next question, which is a follow-up of what you've just said. Where are the political parties? Where are the political parties that believe in the old idea of India? Where are they? Why are they not out there?
No, they tried to do what they could. And I think the suddenness and totality in terms of seats of the BJP victory in May has hidden the fact. There are 3 facts I'd like to bring to your attention. Number 1 is that peripheral India, starting from Kerala, going to Tamil Nadu, going north to Andhra Pradesh, going slightly west to Telangana, going further north to Orissa, going further north to Bengal, and then moving eastwards, we find that in Bihar the BJP can't win without Nitish Kumar. And in the north there are pockets like Punjab, which have said no to Mr. Modi. So the total vote against Mr. Modi, or at any rate, let me change it to say, the total vote for Modi was 37%. The total vote for others than Modi was 63%. So a huge majority of Indians as well as geographical areas in the country have not fallen for this. Also, if, as is happening frequently in the Indian media these days, you see the two maps of which were the states under BJP rule just 2 years ago in 2017, and you see the shrinking space, he used that expression, for secularism, but you see the shrinking space for Hindutva in terms of the state government. So I think a lot of this explanation lies in two of the factors that he enumerated for populism. One is the personality of Mr. Modi. When Modi comes into the picture, then other issues tend to take a backspace. And he exploits, he didn't say so, but I'd like to say so, he exploits a kind of peculiar salience between the word Pakistan and Indian Muslims. He never refers to Indian Muslims, but he's all the time endlessly talking about Pakistan. And just before this session, I sat in with amazement at a session on the future of Pakistan in the next 10 years. And although a series of problems were raised, different problems by the three major political parties, India's name did not figure at all. I've never been happier in my life. Whereas in the Indian election, Pakistan is endlessly mentioned and a subtle salience is drawn between Pakistan and the Indian Muslim, which is why, perhaps it's an exaggeration on my part which is going to get me into trouble, I don't regard, as an Indian, I don't regard Pakistan as a foreign policy problem. I regard Pakistan as a domestic Indian problem. We cannot become a fully secular country unless we have good relations with Pakistan.
Well then, I'm going to turn to you. I want your take on this, the notion of the idea of India. There's a lot written on this, on the idea of India. And Narendra Modi seems to have successfully challenged it. Can you tell me whether the idea of India is still alive and kicking? You know, the reason why I ask that is because originally we were told these were students and you know, the campuses caught the headlines. And now the women are coming out, and then young people because of the demographic changes that have taken place. But are they really protesting about the Citizenship Act? Is there a peg on which they're protesting about something else? Because as many just pointed out, 67% of the Indian electorate did not vote for Narendra Modi. They voted for all the other mainstream and regional parties. So is this a way of demonstrating that what Narendra Modi is up to in terms of wanting to change the civilizational or political nature of India? Are they protesting about that? Is that the hidden line in these protests?
I hate to play pessimist over here, but someone has to. So first of all, I think that 37 or about 40%, if you look at NDA figure, it's misleading because in a first past the post system, when you get 40% of the vote, you get a very large share of the seats. And in Indian elections, I mean, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if anyone has ever got 50%. Even in the 84 election, I think it was just maybe a shade under 50%. But nobody went around saying that, Rajiv Gandhi didn't have a mandate because 50% of the people didn't vote for Congress. It's the nature of the system. So we have to accept, whether we like it or not, that this is the largest mandate we've seen in a generation. This is the most powerful and most popular Prime Minister India has seen in the last 35 to 40 years. Number one on that question. Is the sort of traditional secular idea of India dead? No. But it is definitely beleaguered. It is definitely being challenged in fundamental ways. There is a sense of resentment which perhaps always existed, but existed at the fringes of public life and the fringes of, comparatively the fringes of politics, which I think, at least among many urban educated youth, anyone who sort of knows, it's been 5 5 minutes on what Twitter mentions in your seat, is something real now, right? The sense of grievance, this idea that the minorities have been pampered, this notion of interpreting protections in the Constitution for minorities as a form of pandering, this thing I call Hindu takfirism, right? That you are somehow, there's a new phrase that I've never heard in my life which has come up now, which is Hinduphobia, which is this idea that, if you happen to oppose a particular person or ideology or something, that you're somehow against the religion itself. These are new things, but these, and we've seen this in the Islamic world. These are powerful ideas, and when they take hold, they can take hold, quite strongly. And so my sense is that, in fact, we are in large parts of the country, again, and I agree with many that this sort of, what I'm talking about is sort of most concentrated in the Hindi heartland and the western states like Gujarat and Maharashtra, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and places like that are quite dramatically different. But I think in large parts of India, and among a large section of the educated middle class, in fact, ideas that were virtually non-existent have really taken root.
Maybe it's a common perception, not just in Pakistan, but I think at the international level as well, that Narendra Modi has taken two decisions that have cast India in a bad light, at least outside India. The first one was the abrogation of Article 370, and then followed by the lockout and the human rights violations, which have caught international attention. Every major country in the world has now come out and said that this was a wrong thing to do, and there's been a lot of censure. And then this particular decision, this too has rebounded in a sense, at least at the international level. The question that I have for you is, to what extent is Narendra Modi going to be affected by this international opinion, which is a popular opinion, not just that of states, but also of people? It's the first time that I can recall that India has been shown internationally in a bad light in terms of, what is the great soft image that India used to propagate, the community's romance with India as a secular, pluralistic country, democratic country. Don't you think that's taken a hit? And if it has taken a hit, is Narendra Modi going to respond to it in some fashion, or is he going to plow on regardless?
I don't think the Indian perception of the hit that India's image has taken internationally matches the Pakistani perception of the hit that India's image has taken. I think we see several things that have happened that somebody like me would regard as an inadequate international reaction. So, and I therefore think Mr. Modi could easily write this out. What he would find greater difficulty in writing out is the sudden expression of opposition to some of his favorite ideas that we are seeing on the streets, and we've already seen one domestic political reaction to that. He claims that the NPR, which is the National Population Register, has never been regarded by his government as the predecessor to setting up a national register of Indian citizens. And it has been pointed out now by everybody that even in Parliament the Home Minister has said so, that there are written assurances that have been given in Parliament by the Home Ministry that it is in fact a predecessor to that. So there's a kind of rift, at least in articulation, between the two people who are the face of Hindutva in our government, which is Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah. So in terms, these things are going to have, it is domestic developments. If they persist, if they become stronger, if the forces that are behind them get united politically, then we could have a major consequence. But what international opinion has to say, I think we can easily shrug off. In fact, let me give you an example. I thought it's quite astonishing that the Organization of Islamic Conference is going to discuss at summit level Kashmir. And then suddenly they said, no, it's not at summit level, it's going to be at foreign minister level. And eventually they said, it's not only going to be at, not going to even be at ministerial level, it's going to be among the parliamentarians. So obviously there isn't as much of an international blowback as may have been anticipated. There has been an international blowback, but it's not as great as you indicated in your question. And the domestic blowback is really what is going to be decisive, not what happens internationally. Because we went through this during the emergency. During the emergency, Mrs. Gandhi was not allowed to go to the West. But immediately after she won the election, everybody welcomed her. Equally, Mr. Modi, after Gujarat, he was banned from going to America and England. And then when he won the election, in fact it was the British High Commissioner who was the first one to go to Ahmedabad and project Modi as the next Prime Minister. So these things I think we are able to take in our stride, but obviously not domestic opinion that may translate into defeat at the polls, as has happened in several BJP strongholds, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra now, Jharkhand. These are all states that belong to them. They're all now with us. So there is a domestic blowback.
Would you like to comment?
Yeah, so very quickly, I don't think, I also think it's not going to really affect the policy, but for a couple of reasons. The first is that domestically, Modi's foreign policy is seen as wildly successful. So I was traveling in Uttar Pradesh before the last election, and that was the week that the Economist had a cover story saying, warning against his re-election, and Time magazine had that famous piece by Atish Taussig, calling him India's divider-in-chief. But she'd sort of travel and talk to people, and one of the things that they would come up with over and over was that, what do you like about Modi? And they'd like the welfare programs and the strong leadership and all of that, but they would often use this phrase, they'd say, Bharat ka naam roshan kar diya. And that is the reality, is that they're not reading the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. And the way the government looks at it is that it's certainly true that they would prefer it if there hadn't been so much really bad international press for India, but they feel that the governments are going to deal with us in the end because it's a big country and it's a big market and it matters in strategic terms. And I certainly don't see, I agree with Mani, I certainly don't see this set of concerns weighing heavily enough on them to sort of move their domestic policy.
Okay, I raised the question because I heard some very strong remarks by an ex-Foreign Secretary of India who alluded to something like this, that this is hurting us and so on. So it's not just that this is a perception in Pakistan. My sense is it's also a perception in India, but I'll let it pass for the time being. You mentioned that Pakistan seems to figure in the Indian narrative, at least in the Modi's narrative, constantly. Well, the narrative over here is that if he's going to be faced with these problems, the sort of rhetoric that is now coming out of India, anti-Pakistan rhetoric, we're going to invade Kashmir, the Azad Kashmir, and so on and so forth, Indian army chiefs making political statements. Is there any possibility, do you think, because is there any possibility that India might consider an adventure, a strategic adventure across the line of control in order to divert attention? Do you think that's a real possibility?
I think it is not a real possibility, and there are intelligent people around Mr. Modi, and I don't think anybody would suggest that there is a solution to India's problems in taking on the problems of Pakistan too. So I don't think there is a certain amount of anger which is being stoked and stoked deliberately against some Pakistani actions. Certainly there is huge widespread anger in India about terrorism that comes from across the border, and a sense of being let down, that enough is not being done to handle these Hafiz Saeeds and Masood Azhars and others who are indulging in activities against India. But I think it would be very foolish for any Indian politician to think that an invasion of Pakistan or strong military aggression as distinct from military action and sustained military aggression against Pakistan would give it such an acceleration in India as to be able to overcome other things. If whatever reaction there is confined to rhetoric and only limited to in some military action, which is what happened between February and May 2019, I would like to take issue with Sadanand on the economic question. If I may just explain that, in 2011, our economy went into a downturn as a result of a delayed reaction to the Western financial crisis. And it was P. Chidambaram who said that if only we had grown at 2% more, the BJP wouldn't have taken over. So it was a failure on the economic front that enabled Modi to come out with an answer that was really a stroke of political genius. He said, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. And if I may explain to a Pakistani audience, Vikas is the Hindi word for Tarakki. Sabke saath hum tarakki karenge. That hid everything else. And it is true, as Sadanand said, that there were a number of welfare schemes that were played up by them and shown as great successes and accepted as such by the Indian people. But it did look to us in the opposition, but by about January, February this year, that there was going to be a quite different result to the one which eventually emerged. And at the time of Pulwama, the terrorist attack in Pulwama, and then the subsequent developments, that played hugely in favor of building up support for Mr. Modi. So we were confused as to why did this unexpected result come, but I think there is now a kind of resurgence among a set of political parties who had been silenced, if you like, for the first 6 months after this huge victory in May. And I think now political parties will find inspiration from the street to make their own movements stronger, more aggressive and more persistent, and build upon victories that we've been having and registering in state elections. And I think next month's election in Delhi, which pits effectively the AAP, Kejriwal, against the BJP, is going to have a major psychological effect on how the country views the stability of this government and its own longevity.
So this question is important from our perspective because we hear a lot of this going on right now, the sort of rhetoric that is coming out from India, both from the Indian media and from the Indian ruling party. You know, after all, it's been argued by Indian analysts that Narendra Modi used the Pakistan bogey and the so-called surgical strikes, etc., to get a huge edge in the last election. And you can't deny that. And so now we have a situation where there is a particular practice of using Pakistan as a bogey to win votes or to sway opinion. And now we have the same sort of rhetoric coming out. Do you share his view that Narendra Modi will not undertake another adventure in order to either distract public opinion or to create a new narrative?
It depends on what you mean by adventure. I agree with Manu that the odds of any kind of large-scale attack on the Pakistani side of Kashmir and trying to take it over, some of that overrated.
I think that's ruled out, but you know the line of control is very hot.
If you're talking about, say, Balakot 2, let's just say, hypothetically, there was some other incident, that is quite easy to imagine. And I think, so that
So that amount, there is additional instability because that has been tried and it has worked. And from a government perspective in India, it has worked at two levels. It worked not just in terms of winning votes, but the international community was also largely supportive of the Indian strike. So that's the sort of part that does raise the potential for instability. But there's something else that actually cuts against it in a peculiar way, which is that the government, because it controls so much of the channels of communication, because so much of television has become journalistic, because people believe whatever they want to believe, they can actually do very little damage and still declare victory. Which is my interpretation of what exactly happened in Balakot. I'm not saying that this is an ideal situation, but I'm saying that within this sort of paradigm where you have a greater risk of escalation, you also have this peculiar phenomenon that allows you a safety valve.
I think we should turn to the floor. I have many more questions, but I think it would not be fair for me to continue. All right, let's see some hands raised. Okay, the gentleman over there with the white hair, yes. Yes.
My name is Ashraf Jahangir Qazi. This has been an absolutely brilliant presentation. And Mani, to you in particular, you talked about being very depressed a couple of months ago about the scene in India, but what has given you great reason for encouragement has been these protests. So from a Pakistani point of view, the question would arise, is there any link between these protests which are taking place and any kind of dissent with respect to Modi's decision on August the 5th regarding Kashmir? I presume, could be mistaken, but that it really essentially has very little to do with Kashmir or dissent from the decision Modi took on August the 5th. This is with regard to the image of India as a secular state and that it's an all-inclusive state, not an exclusive state directed against the Muslim minorities. It does not question seriously the decision taken, other than that it might have been in conflict with the Constitution of India, but essentially with regard to Kashmir, that is a peripheral issue as far as the protest is concerned. Is that right?
So his question is the Kashmir issue peripheral to the protest, the general protest?
As of now, yes, the Kashmir issue is peripheral. I think it's because Kashmir has been conquered for the moment by general winter. Everything is under snow. It's been one of the heaviest snowfalls ever. Communication links had in any case been snapped, and certainly the demonstrations that were taking place in Delhi and elsewhere have, in a sense, thrown Kashmir off the front pages. But what will happen when the snows melt, I'm not in a position to predict, but I think the Kashmir issue is part of our domestic matter. I'm far more concerned with India remaining a secular country than with foreigners holding a secular or non-secular image of India. And in the country itself, we'll just have to see when the clampdown ends or when winter ends, what is the reaction of the people of Kashmir.
Please go ahead.
Sir, my name is Babar. What is the likelihood that BJP will continue to, they have 2/3 majority and they are in a good position with respect to legislation as well. So what is the likelihood that they will continue to follow the path to alter the Constitution of India from its secular foundations, Citizenship Amendment Act, case in point? What is the likelihood that they will continue to go down that path in the other walks of life as well? Really good question. I'm not. So there's a sort of cultural agenda, right? And there are many bills that are spoken of as potentially being in the pipeline. There's a population control law is one of them. There's the Uniform Civil Code, which would basically end the sort of Sharia in civil law for Muslims. These are two big ones that are spoken about. My own sense is that they've been taken aback by the scale of these protests. They're in look and wait mode, which is why they've been backpedaling, as Mani said, on the National Register of Citizens, and basically pretending to not have said what things that they did say. But I think fundamentally, this Modi 2.0 is more clearly and bluntly ideological than Modi 1.0, and I would be very surprised if they actually hit the pause button on this for any length of time. They've come in, look at it from their perspective for a moment. They've come in, they've got an enhanced majority, the opposition is shambolic. This is their moment to make fundamental changes. Why wouldn't they take it?
Yes.
So basically, both of you had actually mentioned that domestic issues essentially tend to trump international issues, right? But you clearly see that in the Indian media, Pakistan somehow or another figures most times. So which sort of audience is the Indian media actually playing out to? Because you've always talked about that domestic issues are more important, right?
Sorry, come again. I'm not sure we understand your question.
So what I wanted to say was that domestic issues usually trump international issues. So the BJP government is more interested in what domestically is happening as opposed to international. But the media tends to play it differently. If you look at the Indian media, there is more talk about Pakistan, and most of it is being reported about Pakistan. Why is that so?
So I'll take a very quick stab in this.
This is a very widespread view in Pakistan that the Indian media is obsessed with Pakistan. I think the Pakistanis are obsessed with news about Pakistan on the Indian media. The preoccupation is with domestic matters, and Pakistan certainly figures. There's also, I think, a distinction to be made between the hysteria, particularly anti-Pakistan hysteria, in parts of the visual medium and the more sober approach that is taken in the print media. There are also distinctions to be made between the English language media and vernacular media. So it's this business of what is the media image, it's a composite of very contradictory photographs. I'm sorry I didn't understand your question, only because you bear a disturbing resemblance to Amit Shah.
Can I quickly take it? I'm going to also quickly answer your question. So I agree with that, but I think there is something to be said for the fact that at least on Indian television, there is no longer an ability to talk about Pakistan sanely or calmly. So that point that you make actually is a valid point, and it's fair. I'll give you a quick sort of example. I was an analyst on one of these TV channels during the elections, and at that night when the election results came in, around 10 o'clock they decided to do a show, and the show was about how Pakistani websites were covering the Indian election that Modi had won. And the anchor's premise was, why are these Pakistanis interfering in our election? And I'm like, you have a neighbor who just had an election. It's the most natural thing in the world for them to be writing about it. And so to that extent, the conversation, at least on television, has become just unhinged, unfortunately.
Yes, the gentleman here. Oh, sorry, go ahead. You have to raise your voice here.
Yes. this is a woman asking a question as a woman. So Dr. Iyer, you mentioned how Modi's personality plays a huge impact. His being charismatic for certain people. Isn't that true for all, most if not all populist leaders, including Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in Pakistan, and Trump, perhaps Trump as well? And then the other part of the question, which probably Sadanand could answer, is the rise of populism in India, or the rise of Modi in India, perhaps retrospectively was seen by a lot of us as a precursor to the rise of populism in the world. Is there a link, or are these isolated populist leaders that just happen to be happening at the same time?
So, I don't know, but I mean, it's not a direct link in the sense that Modi gets elected and therefore it affects someone else's election, but I think that you have certain, common features. You have the fact that globalization is at its fag end after 3 decades of delivering. You have some of these economic anxieties, you have these demographic anxieties. A lot of what you saw in Europe was really sparked by the refugee crisis of 2015. You have the revolution in communication. The fact that these leaders can communicate directly to people through Twitter or through Facebook, and they don't need the normal mediation through the media and so on. So there are obviously this is a moment which has certain aspects that different leaders in different parts of the world have taken advantage of, but that doesn't necessarily mean that one is linked to the other in an explicit way.
Okay, I'm going to take 2 more questions. Yes, the gentleman here.
Saqib Rahim, actually the fire of Hindutva populism is never going to stop in India. It will have its regional repercussions. You will have different forms of populism in different countries. I'm particularly talking about South Asia. So how it will affect the delicate tense security conundrum that is already playing out in South Asia. Will we see?
So what's your question, please?
So how it will affect the security conundrum? It